The moment I saw her standing at the edge of the dimly lit parking lot, clutching her hoodie with trembling fingers and staring down at her stomach, my breath caught in my chest like someone had pressed pause on the world. The cool Washington night pressed against my skin, but all I felt was the heat of panic crawling through my bones. I had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in my mind, but now that it was here, now that she finally agreed to meet after weeks of avoiding me, everything inside me twisted into a single burning question. I stepped closer, my voice breaking before the words even formed. I whispered the sentence I'd been holding like a storm inside my ribs. I said, "The baby, it's mine, right? That night we—" She looked up, wide-eyed, startled, as if she had never expected to hear my fear out loud. She swallowed, flushed, and then stammered the kind of answer that knocks the soul out of a man. She replied, "No. I just ate too much. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel reach more hearts just like yours." For a moment, I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or collapse from the weight I'd been carrying alone. My name is Marcus Hale, a 28-year-old construction supervisor from Spokane, Washington, and I had spent the last 6 weeks rethinking every decision I ever made with Grace Turner, a woman who came into my life unexpectedly and left me holding questions heavy enough to anchor me to the floor. The night we grew close had not been planned. It came after months of dancing around emotions neither of us wanted to name, both of us carrying scars we'd never had the courage to show each other. Grace was the kind of woman who lived quietly but felt deeply. She grew up in Nebraska before moving to Washington for work as a barista and part-time painter. I first met her when my crew was renovating the old coffee shop where she worked. She always brought us free cups of steaming caramel macchiatos and smiled with her whole face, as if she was giving light to anyone who crossed her path. But I could see behind the smiles, sometimes in the late afternoons when the sun dipped through the window, her eyes carried storms she never spoke about. When we finally hung out outside of work, it wasn't because either of us planned it. A sudden rainstorm had hit the town, trapping us inside the shop with the windows fogged and the world dripping in silver. We talked for hours about life, about loneliness, about wanting to be understood. Somewhere between the stories and the soft laughter, something unspoken grew in the space between us. It wasn't romance, not yet. It was belonging, the kind that feels rare in a world full of noise. One night, weeks later, everything changed. I had invited Grace to my apartment for a simple movie and dinner. She looked exhausted, carrying a rough day in her shoulders. She talked about her job, her worries, her past. I didn't try to fix her pain, I just listened. That night we didn't cross any lines that would have changed our futures forever, but emotions ran dangerously close. When she hugged me goodbye, she held on longer than usual. I felt something in that silence, a heart asking for comfort yet scared to accept it. The next morning she started pulling away. She stopped replying quickly, stopped dropping by my job site, and when I saw her by chance at the grocery store, she brushed past with a weak excuse about being busy. I assumed I had done something wrong. I assumed I had made her uncomfortable or brought back memories she didn't want to remember. But I kept quiet because pressuring her felt heartless. Then one day, 2 weeks later, I saw her from across the mall. She held her stomach as she walked slowly into a clothing store. Panic shot through me like lightning. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the fear grew bigger every day. The possibility, however small, haunted every minute I lived. I knew. We hadn't crossed that line, but fear isn't always rational. Fear imagines. Fear exaggerates. Fear lies to you until you can't tell if your own mind is betraying you. For the next month, I barely slept. I questioned every whisper of that night, every hesitant emotion, every blurred memory. I wondered if something had happened I wasn't aware of. I wondered if she was scared, ashamed, confused. I wondered if I was about to become a father by accident, or, worse, if she was going through it alone. When she finally agreed to meet me tonight, my chest had been pounding so hard it hurt to breathe, and now here we were, in the cold night of a supermarket parking lot under flickering lights, facing a misunderstanding so ridiculous that it should have made everything instantly better. But it didn't. Instead, as Grace nervously rubbed her arms and explained herself, the truth cracked open like a fragile shell. She hadn't been avoiding me because she was pregnant. She wasn't carrying a secret child. She was carrying something else entirely, fear of her own heart. As she looked at me with embarrassed eyes, she admitted she had been overwhelmed lately. She had been eating too much, stress eating to numb her emotions. And when I saw her that day holding her stomach, she had just been dealing with indigestion. She avoided me not out of guilt, but because she felt judged by the world, judged by herself, and didn't want me to see her fall apart. She told me she had panicked when she sensed how close we were getting emotionally, how safe she felt with me, and she wasn't ready to trust it yet. She had run away because it felt easier than facing something she cared about too much. As she spoke, something inside me broke, not in pain, but in realization. I had been worrying about fatherhood while she was drowning in her own battles, silent and alone. I stood beside her as cars rolled past us and the night deepened. I told her gently that she didn't have to run from me, that I wasn't expecting anything. Not commitment, not perfection, not certainty, just honesty. I told her I wanted to be someone she could lean on without fear of being too much. And then something unexpected happened. She cried. Not a small tear or two. She cried the kind of tears that come from releases long overdue, the kind that shake your shoulders and crack open the parts you've kept hidden for too long. She told me about childhood struggles, about being raised to hide her pain, about trying to be strong for everyone until she forgot how to be vulnerable. She admitted she liked me, possibly more than she had ever intended to, and that terrified her. People she cared about had always walked away, so she wanted to walk away first. It was the only protection she knew. I stood there, listening, feeling the weight of her truth settle softly into my chest. Something gentle bloomed inside me, a new understanding of her heart. Life had taught her that closeness was dangerous. I wanted to teach her that closeness could also be safe. We ended up walking to a nearby bench as the air grew colder. She leaned against my shoulder, sniffling quietly, and for the first time in weeks, the silence between us felt peaceful rather than heavy. I told her I didn't want to lose her. She whispered that she didn't want to lose me either. We talked for hours about fear, trust, healing, and second chances. I didn't push her to define anything, to make promises she wasn't ready for. I simply let her feel valued, understood, and free to be imperfect. Her vulnerability became a bridge between us, turning misunderstanding into connection. By the time the night sky faded toward dawn, something had shifted. Not into romance, not yet, but into a beginning. One built not on fear or confusion, but on truth. Later, as we walked back to our cars, she paused, looked at me with soft eyes, and whispered that she was glad I asked the question, even if it embarrassed her. She said it showed her I cared, not about the fear, not about the misunderstanding, but about her. And somehow that meant everything. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these emotional stories alive. Special request: before the ending fades, drop a comment saying where you're watching from. It means more than you know. Grace and I didn't become a couple that night, but we became something more important. Two people finally brave enough to be honest, finally ready to grow, finally open to the possibility of something real. Life rarely gives us perfect beginnings. Sometimes it gives us messy misunderstandings, awkward fears, and late-night talks in parking lots that change everything. But sometimes, that's exactly where healing starts. And for us, that night wasn't the end of confusion. It was the beginning of clarity, the beginning of trust, the beginning of something fragile, honest, and beautifully human, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of love.